In the year 1405, a woman named Christine de Pizan did something that shocked the world. She wrote a book, but not just any book. She wrote the Book of the City of Ladies, a book that celebrated the achievements of hundreds of women. In a time when women were often seen as nothing more than property, Christine dared to show that women were intelligent, capable, and worthy of respect. Her book was like a beacon, shining a light on the hidden world of medieval women. Imagine a time when history was all about kings, popes, and wars. Women were barely mentioned. They were invisible, their stories lost to time. But why? Was it because they did nothing important? Or was it because their stories were deliberately ignored? The truth is, women were everywhere in the Middle Ages. They were farmers, midwives, merchants, and even warriors. They ran businesses, managed estates, and sometimes they even ruled kingdoms. But their stories were often left out of history books. One of the most striking examples is the story of an old English birth charm. It's a spell that was used by midwives to help women during childbirth. The charm goes like this: "This is my remedy for hateful slow birth. This my remedy for heavy difficult birth. This my remedy for hateful imperfect birth." These words, spoken as a midwife stepped over a dead man's grave, show that women were not just passive in the face of nature's challenges. They were active, they were resourceful, and they were determined to help other women. But it wasn't just in the realm of childbirth where women made their mark. Take the story of Empress Theodora, who lived in the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century. She was born into poverty, her father a bear keeper. She became an actress and some say a prostitute just to survive. But she was also incredibly smart and ambitious. She married Emperor Justinian and became one of the most powerful women in the world. She influenced laws, making divorce fairer for women and improving their rights. Her story shows that even in the most unlikely circumstances, women could rise to the top. Another remarkable woman was Balthild, a queen in France in the 7th century. She was a former slave, but she didn't let her past define her. She worked tirelessly to end the practice of infanticide, the killing of newborn babies, and the slave trade. She also built churches and monasteries, leaving a lasting legacy of compassion and faith. These women, and countless others like them, were the unsung heroes of the Middle Ages. They were the ones who kept families together, who managed estates, who healed the sick, and who sometimes even led armies. But their stories were often forgotten or worse, never written down at all. Why did this happen? Part of the reason is that history was written by men, and men often didn't see the value in women's contributions. But another part is that women themselves didn't always have the opportunity to tell their own stories. They were too busy working, too busy surviving to write books or chronicles. And when they did, those books were often destroyed or ignored. But the tide is changing. Today, historians are working to uncover the stories of medieval women. They are digging through old texts, examining artifacts, and piecing together the lives of these remarkable women. They are showing that the Middle Ages were not just a time of kings and wars, but a time of women who defied the odds and made a difference. So as you read this book, remember, the Middle Ages were not a single monolithic era. They were a tapestry of diverse experiences, a world where women like Christine de Pizan, Empress Theodora, and Balthild left their mark. Their stories are not just part of history. They are a vital part of our shared human story, and they are waiting to be discovered. In the years between 1100 and 1350, the role of queens in medieval courts became more clearly defined. Queens were often seen as the primary bearers of the king's heir, a role that gave them significant influence and power. Even though they were less likely to inherit the throne compared to men, they were increasingly recognized as the legitimate mothers of the future king. This shift was evident in places like Norway, where King Håkon Håkonarsson ruled that only his legitimate children could ascend to the throne. When a king died and left a young heir, the queen often became the regent, ruling on behalf of her son until he was old enough to govern. This role allowed queens to wield considerable power and influence. For example, when a king was away at war or became mentally ill, the queen might step in to rule. Some queens, like Margaret of Denmark, ruled in their own right, not just as regents. Margaret, who lived from 1353 to 1412, married King Håkon VI of Norway and Sweden. After his death, she became a powerful ruler, influencing the politics of multiple kingdoms. Queens also played important roles as mediators and intercessors. They often helped to resolve conflicts and negotiate peace, using their position to ensure diplomatic solutions. Their maternal role was central to their identity, and they were often involved in the education and upbringing of their children, including the future king. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, historians have made great strides in uncovering the roles and lives of women in the past. Elizabeth de Burgh, Lady of Clare, who lived from 1295 to 1360, is a well-documented example of a powerful medieval woman. She was wealthy, educated, and deeply involved in patronage. Elizabeth founded Clare College at the University of Cambridge and several religious institutions. She commissioned works of art, including illuminated manuscripts, and donated books to both her daughter and King Edward III. However, much of the information about ordinary people has been lost or remains undiscovered. Most people in the Middle Ages could neither read nor write, and much of their knowledge was passed down orally. We have examples of oral literature, like the epic poem Beowulf, which was eventually written down, but what have we lost? The vast majority of people can only be accessed through chance remarks in records like wills, Inquisition records, and miracle accounts. Literature can provide valuable insights into the lives of medieval women. Even though a magical romance may not reflect reality directly, it can show us how a culture imagined itself. For example, we know that women sang lullabies to their children, because many songs depict the Virgin Mary singing calming music to Jesus. Nursery rhymes, references to games, and carols suggest that children were a significant part of medieval life. Noble girls received education at home or in convents, where they might learn to read and write in the vernacular language. Reading was encouraged so that girls could access religious texts, and it was considered essential for conducting business and political negotiations. Before the 14th and 15th centuries, most peasants were illiterate. However, a 1406 statute in England declared that every person, regardless of their status, had the right to send their children to school. Records from this period provide glimpses into the lives of children, such as an 8-year-old girl named Elizabeth Garrard, who attended a school run by a priest. She learned the Paternoster, the Ave, and the Credo, along with other lessons. Schoolmistresses also existed, such as Agnes, who taught girls before 1440. A will from a London grocer in 1406 left 20 shillings to a schoolmistress, highlighting the importance of education for both boys and girls. We have evidence of the types of books children read and were taught from. Boys in grammar schools learned Latin, while girls often learned the vernacular language. Courtesy books aimed at boys taught good behavior, and there were guides for identifying animals and hunting terms, such as the one written by Juliana Berners. These books were often in rhyme to make them easier to memorize. ABC books, similar to modern alphabet books, were also common. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote an ABC poem that included religious sentiments, with each stanza beginning with a letter of the alphabet. For example, the stanza beginning with G praises the Virgin Mary and her child. Many women owned books, as evidenced by wills. Joan Buckland, a fishmonger's daughter, left religious books to Sion Abbey, asking the nuns to pray for her soul. Beatrice Milrith, a widow, left several holy texts and a French primer in 1448. Not all books were strictly devotional. Some were more secular, like the allegorical poem Piers Plowman. Medieval scholars often read the Bible allegorically, seeing moments in the Jewish Bible as prefiguring events in Christian scripture. This method of interpretation was also applied to literary texts. For example, in the Old English saint's Life of Saint Agatha, the cruel governor Quintianus tries to force Agatha, a virgin, to become his lover. When his efforts fail, he has her breasts torn off. Agatha, however, remains steadfast in her faith, saying, "I have my breast sound in my soul." This scene, common in legends of virgin martyrs, served as a role model for young women to remain firm in their devotion. Can we call some medieval women feminists? If a feminist is defined as someone who values other women as women, then yes, some medieval women were feminists. Marjorie Kemp, for example, acted on her inner calling, while Hildegard von Bingen helped others achieve fulfillment by setting up a convent. Joan of Arc and Margaret of Beverley took on roles traditionally reserved for men. Christine de Pizan championed the idea that women should be recognized as human beings. To understand medieval women, we need to think in the context of their time. Many actions that seem strange to us today, such as visiting a saint's bone for healing, were common and meaningful to medieval people. Self-determination for a medieval woman might look different from modern notions of freedom. For example, an anchorite who chose to live in a cell next to a church was seen as a powerful and respected figure. These women are significant because they show how they survived and thrived in a world that often saw them as lesser than men. They provide examples of resilience and determination, and their stories offer lessons that are still relevant today. In the land of Iceland, where the Vikings once roamed, there lived a woman named Gudrun Osvifsdottir. Born around 970, Gudrun was a beautiful and clever woman, known for her sharp mind and strong will. Her life was a series of dramatic events that showed both her fierce determination and her capacity for deep emotion. Iceland during Gudrun's time was a place of rough and rugged beauty, where people lived close to the land. The Vikings, who were originally from Scandinavia, had settled here, bringing with them their own customs and way of life. They were known for their bravery, their seafaring skills, and their sometimes violent ways. Women, too, played important roles in this society, often managing the household and sometimes even leading in battles. Gudrun's story begins with her first marriage at the age of 15. Her husband, not to her liking, slapped her one day. Instead of reacting with anger, Gudrun responded with a calm but biting remark about the beauty of having rosy cheeks. This was just the beginning of her life, filled with strong words and actions. When Gudrun met Kjartan, a young and handsome man, she felt a deep connection. Kjartan, however, needed to go on a traditional journey to Norway to meet the king and gain favor. Gudrun, wanting to be with him, boldly asked to join him. This was unheard of for a woman, and Kjartan refused. He promised to return in 3 years, but Gudrun was not patient. During Kjartan's absence, Gudrun married Balthild, a man who secretly loved her. Balthild was a good man, but Gudrun did not love him as she loved Kjartan. When Kjartan finally returned, he was engaged to another woman, Hrafna, who tried on a gold-studded headdress that was originally meant for Gudrun. This caused a rift between Gudrun and Hrafna, and tensions rose. Gudrun, feeling jealous and hurt, convinced Balthild to take revenge on Kjartan. In a tragic turn of events, Balthild ended up killing Kjartan, who had thrown down his weapons, preferring to die by his best friend's hand rather than cause Balthild's death. Gudrun, though cold in her reaction, was deeply affected by the loss of Kjartan. Years later, after Balthild was also killed, Gudrun waited 12 years before seeking revenge for his death. She encouraged her sons, even a young one, to avenge their father. She showed them their father's blood-stained clothes, urging them to act. This was a common practice in Viking society, where families were expected to seek justice for the deaths of their loved ones. Despite her tough exterior, Gudrun was capable of love and kindness. She eventually married again, this time to a man with whom she found happiness. However, even this marriage ended in tragedy when her husband drowned. A ghost told her of the news, and Gudrun, ever the sharp-tongued woman, told the ghost to keep silent. Gudrun's life was a testament to the strength and complexity of women in Viking society. She was a woman of many layers, capable of both deep love and fierce vengeance. Her story, recorded in the Laxdæla saga, is a powerful example of the roles women played in the founding and shaping of medieval Iceland. Hrotsvit of Gandersheim lived around the year 935 to 1000. She was a nun who wrote plays, poems, and histories, making her a pioneer in many fields. Hrotsvit was born in a time when few women had the opportunity to write, but she defied the norms and became a celebrated author. Hrotsvit lived in a place called Gandersheim, which was a religious community for women. Despite the strict rules and expectations, Hrotsvit found a way to express herself through her writing. She wrote plays that told stories of strong women who faced great challenges and overcame them through their faith and courage. One of her most famous plays is about a woman named Pelagia, who was a dancer but chose to become a nun and resisted the advances of a powerful man. Hrotsvit's plays were unique because they were written in Latin, the language of the educated elite. She used this language to reach a wide audience, and to show that women were just as capable as men in creating powerful and meaningful works of art. Her stories often featured women who were brave, intelligent, and determined, traits that were not typically highlighted in the literature of her time. In addition to plays, Hrotsvit wrote poems and historical accounts. Her poems celebrated the lives of saints and other important figures, while her histories documented the deeds of the Counts of Saxony, the region where she lived. Through her writing, Hrotsvit provided a voice for the women of her time and helped to preserve their stories for future generations. Hrotsvit's work was not just a personal achievement, it also had a broader impact. Her plays and writings challenged the idea that women were only meant to be passive and submissive. By creating strong female characters, she showed that women could be leaders, thinkers, and creators. Her work influenced other writers and thinkers, and it continues to be studied and appreciated today. Hrotsvit's life and writings are a testament to the power of education and the importance of giving voice to those who are often silenced. She proved that even in a world dominated by men, women could make significant contributions and leave a lasting legacy. Her stories of strong, independent women continue to inspire readers and writers to this day. Emma of Normandy, born in a time of great conflict and change, became a pivotal figure in the history of England through her strategic marriages and political acumen. Born to Richard I, Duke of Normandy, and Gunnar, a woman of Danish descent, Emma was a product of the intertwined destinies of Norman and Danish families. Her life began amidst the ongoing struggles between the English and the Danish Vikings, who had been raiding and settling in England for centuries. At a young age, Emma was married to Ethelred II, the Anglo-Saxon King of England, in 1002. This marriage was a strategic move to create peace between the English and the Normans. Ethelred, known for his violent actions against the Vikings, had already been married and had children. Despite this, Emma gave birth to 3 children, Edward, Alfred, and Godfrey, each bearing names that reflected the mixed heritage of English, Danish, and Norman French. The Viking invasions continued, and in 1013, Sweyn Forkbeard, a Danish king, conquered England. Emma and her children fled to Normandy, seeking refuge. After Sweyn's death, Ethelred briefly regained the throne, but his reign was cut short by his own death in 1016. Emma's stepson, Edmund Ironside, ruled for a mere few months before being assassinated. In 1016, Cnut, Sweyn's son, became the King of England. Recognizing the importance of unity, Cnut sought to marry Emma, the widow of Ethelred, and a symbol of both English and Norman heritage. Emma agreed to the marriage, but she was no passive participant. She demanded that Cnut promise to pass the throne to her children, ensuring that her lineage would continue to rule England. Cnut and Emma had 2 children, Harthacnut and Gunhild, and Emma worked tirelessly to secure their future. During her time as queen, Emma played a crucial role in the complex politics of the time. She was a peace weaver, a role that was both noble and fraught with challenges. Her position required her to navigate the interests of her birth family in Normandy and her adopted family in England. Emma's ability to balance these loyalties and her strategic thinking made her a powerful figure in the court. After Cnut's death in 1035, Emma's influence continued. She supported her son Harthacnut's claim to the throne, and when Harthacnut died in 1042, her other son Edward, later known as Edward the Confessor, became king. Emma's legacy is one of resilience and strategic vision, as she navigated the tumultuous waters of medieval politics to ensure the survival and success of her children. Emma's life story is a testament to the complexity and strength of women in the Middle Ages. Despite the challenges she faced, she remained a key player in the political landscape of England, leaving a lasting impact on the nation's history. Her children, Edward and Harthacnut, would go on to rule England, and her influence continued to shape the country's future long after her death in 1052. Emma's legacy is a reminder of the significant role that women played in the medieval world, often behind the scenes, but always with a profound impact.